Episode 4, Where the Sidewalk Ends. Alright, and welcome back, new and old listeners alike. You're welcomed into my dark and sordid little corner of the internet. You may call me Jessi, and I'm here to share the various dark and inexplicable encounters that everyday people have. So sit back, put your feet up, and listen. A saga I found once at a library. To anyone reading this, whenever or wherever, I want you to know, it's all true. It sounds unbelievable, but it's true, I swear. See, I died. I know how that sounds, but I did. I was clinically dead for only a few seconds, but I was actually dead for centuries, even millennia. Let me explain. When I was a kid, about 9 or 10, I started doing what they now call urban exploration, a sort of sport. Maybe not, but I don't know what else to call it. Basically, we find abandoned places like old houses and the like, and, well, explore them. Sometimes they're haunted locations, other times just newly abandoned apartment complexes and warehouses in between ownerships. It's not, strictly speaking, legal, but most of the time if a police officer catches you, they just let you go with a warning. Trespassing isn't taken seriously in most of the places we go. Like I said, most are abandoned, so even if they wanted to press charges, it'd be little more than a slap on the wrist and a small fine. But that's all now. Back then, I more explored things close to home. The little copse of trees by my house, the back path of the park, the old abandoned house on Duckworth Road. Places I could walk to and required very little to no research. I was a kid, I had no patience. My parents weren't all that thrilled about my new hobby, but it did keep me out of the house, and I always came home before supper, so they didn't protest too much. Mostly, they just told me to be careful, pack a flashlight and my phone, and make sure not to have my headphones in, don't talk to strangers, the usual spiels. I listened, for the most part. I often forgot the flashlight and listened to my music every time. I was always home before dark, so it didn't matter, right? Well, a couple of months after I started exploring, I was getting bored. I'd already explored all the areas around my house, and I was getting tired of treading the same paths and looking at the same decaying barns. I still wanted to explore, I just needed something new to find. I spent days at the library computers just looking up different places in my town that were abandoned or closed off. I could have done it at home on the family computer, but I didn't want to chance my parents thinking that this was too dangerous now. Eventually I found something in the newspaper of all things. I wasn't even looking for it, nor was I even reading the paper. I mean, who does that nowadays? But it was open on the table next to me at the library, and someone walked past it, the air from their movement causing it to rustle ever so slightly. It was enough that it pulled my eyes towards it, and I blinked slowly. I couldn't tell you exactly what it was that caused me to keep looking at it, as normally if something had distracted me, I'd just go right back to whatever I was doing. But this time, something held my attention fast. It took me a few seconds to even realize what I was looking at. A picture of a house, old and decrepit. It was a for sale listing, one that seemed to be quite old, as the newspaper was starting to yellow just a bit. The house was a 2-story with an unfinished basement, according to the listing. It was an ugly brown thing, with shingles falling off the roof and a door that had been boarded up and windows with no glass. In short, a perfect place to go exploring in. My first clue that something was odd should have been the address, or lack of an address. It just said, "Where the Sidewalk Ends," in place of a street name or number. It puzzled me at first, but I took the page from the paper anyways. Maybe someone I knew at school, or maybe even my older sister, might know where this was. I'd just have to be careful not to mention it in front of my parents. I didn't get a chance to ask her that night, but it was on my mind the whole time, all throughout dinner and even into bed that evening. I had turned my video games on, but I wasn't really paying attention to them, rather just staring at that photo, the paper crumpled and creased from being shoved into my bag. This house was exactly what I was looking for. An old and abandoned place somewhere off the beaten path. It'd be perfect. The next morning I asked some kids at school if they'd seen this house. Most of them knew of my hobby by this point, and a few had even explored some old barns with me just down the street from my school. We'd taken our lunch breaks a few times and jumped on the old hay bales or been grossed out by the old animal droppings. It had actually been quite fun. None of them had any idea where it was, though. Honestly, typing this out, I'm just seeing all the sheer coincidences that led to it. The newspaper clipping, the teacher, the broken down bus. Anywho, it wasn't until the end of the day that I hit pay dirt. A teacher passing by, I was showing another kid, recognized it. Mr. Bell, my maths teacher. He'd called it the old Itadori house. Apparently some old Japanese couple had once lived there some decades ago. It had been abandoned for all that time, and even a few years ago their daughter had found the deed to the house and decided to sell it. No one had ever been to see it since the one realtor had allegedly gone in to view it and ran out screaming, leaving their car and everything behind. It had been boarded up and vacant ever since. Honestly, hearing that, I was practically salivating. A mystery house, long abandoned, maybe even haunted. It was like being a kid in a candy store. I asked him where it was, and he told me the rough area. He didn't remember the exact address, but at least knew what street it was on. Then he said something that should have given me pause, and now all this time later I still mentally kick myself for not paying attention. He said he remembered where it was solely because that's where the sidewalk ends. I had blinked at that and just shrugged and thanked him for the info. He hadn't actually read the article, I'd only taken the photo out, so how he could have known that's what it said. And yet I didn't even think about it. I went home, my mind was abuzz with excitement and hopes that soon I'd be exploring something entirely new. I knew I had to prepare this time though. It was some distance from the house, but the bus I took had some stops relatively close by, so I convinced one of my friends to pretend I was staying with him on Friday night. The idea was that I would spend the night exploring, then walk to his house in the morning and get picked up. My parents were cool with the lie, it was far from the first time I'd stayed there. I packed my backpack with snacks for the night, 2 flashlights with extra batteries, my portable phone charger, my phone for pictures, a map just in case. I doubted I would get any signal out there. A heavy jacket in case it got cold, and a notebook with a pencil in case I wanted to draw or record anything I saw. I'd seen some ghost shows and knew that ghosts tended to be seen on special cameras, but there was no way I was affording that, so I just figured I'd have to hope they showed up when I arrived. The day went by painfully slow, each class dragging on and on. I told my friend exactly where I was going and what I was doing, just in case. Figured if I got lost or couldn't get to his place in time, having someone know where I was probably the smart thing to do, and let me tell you, it really was. But we're getting there. When class finally ended, I hopped on the bus paying attention to the stops when it broke down. It broke down mere meters from my friend's stop, so we just left. The bus driver knew I went to my friend's place regularly, so he didn't even bother stopping us, just wished us a good weekend. For me, this worked out perfectly. I could head to the old Itadori house and had yet another witness for my lie. My friend wished me luck, and we parted ways at his house, and I marched down the road, determined to get there before sunset. Yes, I had flashlights, but the pictures would look better in the daylight, and it would be easier to see, and plus then I'd have more time to explore. I got there just as the sun hit the horizon, leaving me barely any light. I was a little disappointed, but I knew that I had the whole night, so I wasn't too worried about it. I took a few moments to take some distance shots. I wanted to record as much of my trip as possible. No real reason. I had no one to really share these with, but it just kind of seemed like the thing I was supposed to do. I took note that indeed where the driveway met the road, the sidewalk ended. There was also no number or mailbox around, so even now I don't know the address of the place. I took some video of me heading up the driveway and reaching the front porch. I had to turn the phone off as I gagged. However, the smell coming from the house was... Ugh. It was like moldy clothes times 10. I hadn't expected that, so I just pulled my shirt over my nose and tried to brave it. The door was boarded up, but the windows were basically huge holes in the walls, so I knew I could climb in easily enough. But I still wanted to get all the outside shots I could before the light died for the night. So I walked around the sides and the back, sometimes taking pictures, sometimes vids. In the back I found the first weird thing. There was a small cemetery there. I counted only 10 graves and was a little excited. A house with its own graveyard? Had I hit the jackpot or what? So I started taking shots, the house temporarily forgotten as I explored this new area. Most of the names were worn with age and unreadable, but I photoed them anyways. A couple were slightly visible, at least the last names. I should be more specific. It was in the first name place, but they're Japanese, which even then I knew meant their last name came first, I think. Can you guess the names? Itadori. A pair of matching headstones with some Japanese writing under their names. A saying or an epitaph if I had to guess. I snapped a photo of the names just as the sunlight died finally for the night. I took a moment to break out one of my flashlights and decided any more outdoor exploration could be done in the morning light, and headed back to the house. In the night's darkness, the house seemed much further away. The graves had only been maybe 100 feet away, and yet when I turned back it seemed double or even triple that distance. I swallowed, nervousness hitting me for the first time. I made the journey back and clambered a little less than gracefully through one of the windows. It was somehow much colder in the house than it was outside, so much so that I could see my breath in the air lit up by my flashlight. I pulled out my coat, praising my own preparedness. I swept the light around me, looking at the inside for the first time. I was in a bathroom. Yellow walls covered in scraps of old wallpaper. I think that it had a plant pattern on it, but it was impossible to tell in that barely lit darkness. I made a small sketch in my book of the room, planning to make a full house map. I wasn't really worried about getting lost in the house or anything, but again, it felt like the thing to do. I left the bathroom after trying the sink just out of curiosity. Nothing came out, though the sound the pipes made in the house just made me jump. I laughed at myself and continued into the house. The rest of the night was pretty much uneventful, or at least the amount I remember. There was a living room with an ancient couch and a chair, each covered in a white sheet. There was a kitchen with cupboards hanging open, a broken fridge, an oven with no door. I headed up the stairs and found 2 bedrooms and another bathroom. There was carpet everywhere, but the original color was impossible to tell. I headed back down the stairs and into the basement. Now this is where I stop the tale for most people, because I know from experience that they won't believe me. I just tell them I fell down the stairs, and that's where I died for a couple seconds. See, the stairs were fancy. A beautiful marble staircase with a cast iron railing. The stairs were clean too, not a speck of dust on them. I took some photos as I had been and noted the stairs on my map. At this point I was a little more suspicious than scared, just still a little weirded out. What was up with those stairs? Did they really go into the basement? Honestly, I kind of thought that maybe the oven had been on and I'd inhaled some gas somehow or something. There was the strangest greenish glow coming from the bottom, or at least where I assumed the bottom was. You know the kind of green that Disney villains have? Well, I took some photos, but didn't really check them, and before I knew it, I was 1 step down, then 2, then 4, then more as my legs moved on their own faster and faster, taking to the stairs 3 and 4 at a time. I'd never been the most athletic, so I had no idea how I wasn't falling down the stairs at this point, but somehow my feet always hit the next stair without so much as a wobble. My chest heaved as my breath came shorter and shorter, but still my legs kept going. How long was I running for? Surely I had to be at the bottom by now. I didn't dare look back up, not trusting my independent legs not to trip and snap my neck, and I could barely see that forest glow in front of me, never getting closer, but never moving farther. Black spots covered my vision. I gasped harder and harder, feeling like I was breathing through just a small straw. And then it happened. The most mundane thing in all of this weirdness, my shoelace came undone. I don't know if it was undone before I started down the stairs or not, but the result is the same either way. My foot caught on that opposing lace and my leg kept going, pulling me down with it. The last thing I saw before I died was that emerald glow, and then nothing. I don't know how to explain what happened next. No one does, I don't think. See, I died. Like full heartbeat stop, no brain activity, dead. But I was still there, my spirit or my soul, I guess. And I looked out into nothing. When you see nothing in shows and movies, it's often a black void or a white one, but the human mind cannot comprehend actual nothingness. Our entire perception, it's based off of something. So to see nothing, I went insane. I barely remember the centuries that ticked by while I talked to imaginary friends, spent ages doing nothing but cackling, ate food with every great historical figure, had a staring contest with the nothing that lasted for more than 200 years. Eventually, though, I'd come back to some level of awareness every time. Eventually, I forgot my name, I forgot Earth. I honestly don't know how long I was there in that nothing place. I tried counting my heartbeats once, for I still had them somehow. And honestly, I couldn't count all that high. I got to 100 billion or so and just stopped giving up. I kept flashing in and out of that state of awareness, spacing out to the extreme. And then all at once, I was back with a monstrous pain in my chest. I gasped and screamed at the same time, the memories of untold millennia rushing back all at once, and the sound came out as more of a wheeze. There were paramedics standing above me, saying something in a language I no longer understood. Hell, I'm telling you what happened now, years later, but at the time, Well, it was more like seeing aliens. I no longer recognized humans, no longer recognized the place around me, nothing. My friend had called them when I didn't show up that morning. It took weeks of speech therapy for me to remember my name, and then the rest of my memories here slowly came back, the unending stillness of nothing slowly fading into my subconscious. I try not to scratch at it too much. I know that if I tried hard enough, all of that would come rushing back. I'm still urban explorer, though. I thoroughly research every bit of info I can before moving on to each location, and I never go alone, and I tell everyone where I'm going and how long I'll be there. And if I ever go out at night, I never go into any basements. I still dream about that time, that infinite time with an unending nothing. I wake up screaming about it. Sometimes I'm sobbing and sometimes I'm laughing. No one believes me, but I really can't blame them. They weren't there, they don't understand, not really. They don't understand what happened when I died, where the sidewalk ends. The age-old ideal. You can't comprehend nothing. And it's true. Same with infinity. It's not something humans can even conceive of, not really. I don't mean to make light of this, but it seems to me that whoever wrote this, you got off a little easier, at least comparatively. Scientists and leaders, and even religious leaders, have often theorized that just seeing nothingness would drive one mad beyond any hope of recovery. Back in the day of pirates and explorers across the sea, a lot of sailors went mad over the lack of anything on the oceans. Clearly it did take a toll on you, but you seem to be lucid enough to have written this. Tales like this also strike a bit of a different chord in me because there's no clear enemy, no monster in the dark, no magic book, nothing. I wonder if the house itself is or was really haunted, or if that stairway to nothing exists elsewhere. For all my studies and my interests, I have nothing really to compare this to. As I pack up for the night, thank you for listening, Dark Wanderers and not. If you were a believer before this, welcome back, and if this convinced you, welcome once more. If you remain as disbelieving as ever, I hope you found something interesting here and you'll stick around for the next one. Until then, let's cross that veil together.